All right, welcome to the show, Everquest XP. Very special guest today. We have Doomsdee on the show.
How's it going?
Going great. I'm gonna rename you real quick.
Cool.
But yeah, so we've known each other for over 3 years now in game.
Yep.
And I'm super glad you agreed to join the show. And yeah, I was hoping we could just kind of talk about EverQuest and the relationship you have to the game, how you're currently playing now, and what is it about EverQuest that we're continuing to play it all these years later.
Yeah, for sure. I think the main thing that got me into it was I've always been really into games like Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing. But I always thought like as computers were becoming a thing, because we grew up in the generation where computers were new, but we were still learning about them from a young enough age to be a normal thing kind of thing. So I was like, predicting like video games are going to be a great way to do these like Dungeons and Dragons style adventures. In fact, I remember having a board game called Hero Quest, and my mom had this wooden keyboard thing with balsa wood that she had gotten from somebody at work to practice this machine at work that was really specialty that she was going to start using. And I remember setting that up on my kitchen table with all of my Hero Quest figurines and cards around me and pretending that I was playing like a video game version of Dungeons and Dragons.
How old,
Like
how
I
old do
have
you
that memory.
how old do you think you were at the time?
Oh, damn, this must have been, I don't know, maybe 10.
Okay, and
Yeah.
you knew what Dungeons and Dragons was at that age?
Yeah, my parents were really okay with me being into all that stuff. Like I didn't have any really like satanic panic or anything in my house. So like my parents were supportive of me playing Magic and they bought me Dungeons and Dragons like box sets and stuff for Christmas. And we'd go to comic book stores and I would get used, game manuals and stuff from games I didn't even know how to play, but I'd want to flip through them and see all the artwork and read all the little flavor stories and texts and stuff that were all inside them. One of the main reasons I got into Magic was because it was like it was a fun game, but also like artwork, 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 artwork. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, what have you the question that comes to mind is I've been the same way. I played Magic at an early age too, and Wizards and Warriors was those types of board games I was always attracted to. What do you think that is about? Is that a certain temperament where individuals are attracted to the fantasy or the realms like that?
I don't know what it is. I mean, I think it's just some people really like their fiction and their fantasy worlds or whatever to be kind of grounded in reality. They want like police procedures or medical dramas and stuff, and I like those shows. But for me, I've always been attracted to like the extra, the over the top, the, space opera where you've got, 30 different species and a bunch of them are at war and these guys do this and, battles in space, or alternatively, like a fantasy realm with knights and magic and all this other stuff going on. I've always been kind of more attracted to that than necessarily more grounded, stuff. As much as I do enjoy like, a show based in a more normal kind of setting. One of the reasons I like being entertained, especially through video games or something, is to get into like a different world.
Right. Yeah, and another piece too is that magic, like sci-fi has technology, which is a form of magic, but the idea that anything's possible.
Yep. Yeah, it can be a really good gameplay mechanic. It can be a really good storytelling mechanic if it's really used well.
What about so that was the board game that you were playing and you were pretending it was a video game.
Yeah, like I distinctly remember setting it up and having the keys and like the little cards that came with it that had the character stats. And it came with a bunch of Games Workshop figure. Hang on, my cat. Hey, buddy. Hey. The I came with little figurines from the Games Workshop, which is the company that now makes Warhammer. They were the ones that did the little little plastic figurines with it. And I'd set them all up and have them all in the board set up. And I just remember like distinctly remember like this would be so awesome if I could just like because we had a computer at the time, but it was like typing programs and where in the world is Carmen Sandiego and really basic kind of games.
Treasure Mountain. Do you remember that one?
I don't remember that one now.
Yeah, I played Carmen San Diego and okay, so what would you say your earliest video game experience was?
The earliest video game experience that I can really remember is my parents bringing home the original Nintendo. I was probably 4 or 5, and I just remember them setting it up in the living room and starting up Super Mario Brothers was the first one I remember. It had this that Duck Hunt as well, but the first one they turned on was Super Mario Brothers, and I was just hooked from that moment on. Like so.
And you've been playing games ever since. So have you ever
Oh
taken a
yeah.
you've ever taken a long extended break or just
Not from all gaming. From EverQuest I have, and from individual kind of games or styles of games I've taken breaks. Like I spent long periods where I didn't play any MMOs. I didn't play a lot of role-playing games. I had a Call of Duty phase for a little while where I played a ton of Call of Duty. Um, so kind of depends on what's going on, but I've always had gaming as something in my life going on.
when did you when was the first time you had the experience where you were playing a game and then when you weren't playing that game, you were thinking about it like when you're doing other things or
I would probably say Dragon Warrior, which was it's the Dragon Quest series in
the
Japan,
original?
but it launched here as Dragon Warrior.
Yeah.
And it was the first like that was like the idea that I had in my head that I was telling you about earlier with the wooden keyboard. That was the first time I kind of realized it. And I was using a controller instead of a keyboard, but I was like, oh my God, like I'm this knight guy and I'm in this realm and I'm fighting these monsters and I'm going and talking to the townspeople and getting quests to go do. You know what I mean? Like felt like a Dungeons and Dragons adventure just by myself, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that was the first one because I was like kind of at school, like thinking like, oh, when I go home, I'm gonna go north and see if I can that enemy that killed me last time. I'm gonna see if I can get around him, or maybe I can just figure out maybe there's a different area I can go to north. Maybe the only area I can go to, maybe I can go east. I didn't see it was east. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like I'm
wow.
really like just waiting till I get home. I mean, before it was kind of like I can't wait to get home and play my Nintendo, but I wasn't specifically thinking about and being distracted by a specific game until Dragon Warrior.
My brother said something I'd never thought about in the last episode. He said that it for him as a kid, it was an opportunity for him to actually experience a sense of freedom because he didn't get to have that in the real world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't have a lot to do when I was a kid. We didn't do a lot as a family as far as like vacations and stuff and activities. My parents were very much kind of, hey, video games are a thing, so he's kind of distracted by that. So we'll let him sit in his room and play video games and read books and involve himself in all of these fantasy things. So I wasn't really encouraged to go out and do things as much as maybe other kids. So for me, it was definitely a good way to experience grand, wonderful things in a way beyond just reading a story or watching a movie passively. I got to actually like interact and be part of it, make decisions and have consequences to my actions and everything. So I thought that was really appealing.
What was tell me how you found how did you evolve into EverQuest or fall into EverQuest? How did that happen?
So I was, I think, 17 or 18 when EverQuest came out, so a little older than some of the other people that got into it. But I had a friend of mine who had started talking to us about this game that he had been playing, and then I didn't talk to him for a couple of months. And by the time I did talk to him again, he was fully into it and doing raiding. And I guess later on, I figured out he was doing like Vishant's peak level, Kunark Dragons kind of level raiding. And he was a necromancer, and he was telling us stories of how he was trolling people. And I was like, "What do you mean trolling people?" And he's like, "Well, it's a game, but there's like the players are all around you doing stuff, and you can interact with them and trade with them and talk to them and stuff and mess with them." And he was telling me about his fun experience of doing things like offering diamonds in East Commons to newbies if they'll duel him, just so he can um, mez them and leave them there and just sit there and keep them from being able to log out or do anything for as long as possible and just frustrate them and talk to them in chat and just troll them. Or he would go to Oasis and grab one of the specters as a pet and bring it over and scare everybody at the docks until everybody realized it was a pet, and then they would come over and start emoting with the specter and dancing with it and thinking they're all safe, and then he would just feign death and let the pet massacre all the
Wow,
newbies, you know. So he
that
was
was
a troll, and he
awesome.
was telling me about how he was trolling people in this game, and I was like, well, that's, I mean, I'm not a troll, but I mean, that sounds fun. Like you get to play a game with other people, but I didn't really get a chance to go over to his house to check it out. First time I got to see it was another friend of mine. was visiting, um, had a friend visiting him, and they had just installed it on their computer, and he was logging into his account, and he was a early level 50 something warrior, and where was he? Seb, old Seb. He was in like one of the camps in old Seb pulling frog locks, and I was like, what is that? Like that's frog. I mean, frog locks, you know?
You watched him play it on his computer? That's one
Yeah, I
thing.
was me and my, we were smoking weed, and hanging out, and the guy was in the computer in the back room playing, and we were like, let's go hang out back there, and instead of watching TV in the front room with half the people, three, four people that were hanging out there, we went in the back and hung out on the computer, and we just watched him play EverQuest, and he explained to us what he was doing. Oh, these are, the frog guys. I got three guys sitting here that are helping me, and I'm running over here, and I'll grab this guy and bring him back, and we'll fight him, and then and I'm like, oh, so you just fight until the zone's empty? And he's like, no, no, they come back. Like, it's every 15 minutes or something like that. The room we're in will start, frog guys will start showing up. So it can be like really dangerous. And I was like, oh, wow, that's complex. I mean, it's a lot more complex than just like Final Fantasy, walking around until you get a random encounter and fighting those enemies and then moving on. There's no other people involved in those games. So for me, it was like a massive multiplayer game, which it wasn't even called that at the time. Basically, I don't think they'd really coined that term yet. But it was like the idea of like this is a D&D session that you play through a video game, but it's actually like a D&D session because there's hundreds of and dozens of people around you, hundreds of people around you on the server, and dozens of people around you at any given time, or something to interact with. Like that was way, way beyond just playing a fantasy video game or something. It was like a next level. Like this is like because I was into chat rooms and stuff when I was a kid too, and that was one of the ways I socialized a lot as an awkward kid was through chat rooms. So I was like, this is a chat room, a fantasy video game, a D&D campaign, all like rolled into one on a computer, and that I can play on a computer. And I
Did
was
you
like,
ha
on away.
did you have a computer at the time?
We had a family computer. It was really weak, very, very weak. Our internet was very slow. I think it was like 18.8 when everybody else had 56K modems, and for the most part, they were at 56K. And some people were even getting like cable lines and faster internet beyond 56K. But our 56K modem, I remember, would often connect at like 16.6 or something like that, really slow. So my zone times were really terrible on my parents' computer. So by the time I finally got so the first time I ever played was on a friend's computer, of like a third friend who had a computer. And I would hang out there with his roommate. And when that guy would go to work, his roommate would, like your brother, like you said on the episode, he would sneak over like Gollum and just attach himself to the computer the moment the guy would go to work and play while he was at work. And he would take breaks and be like, why don't you jump on and play a little bit and figure it out? And that's when I first got to like get my hands on and be like, okay, I'm going to play EverQuest. And I started a character on his account, and it was an Ixar Shadowknight. And I was like, this is amazing. Like this old city, like there's all these lizard people around, and there's these little dogs running around, and I got stuck in dove into the water on accident, and it took me forever to figure out how to get out because the ladder mechanics were not super good. They're still not good. And I was like, okay, so I figured that out. All right, so I'm doing this, and I'm wandering around and talking to people, and I ended up talking to some NPC that ended up offering me a quest, and he's like, "Well, good, fill these up with something," and he hands me a bag, and I was like, oh no, I have a bag, I have more inventory space," like everything was just like alive and new. And then I wander out into Field of Bone, and it's getting, I think it was dark when I first got out there, so it was like really, really dark compared to the inside of the city, and I was like, oh, what am I doing here? And I just, the progression of the game is it's really set up nicely. You kind of move away from the city and start wandering away, and there's these little level one things around. Okay, start beating up that thing. Okay, that's fine. I can do that. And then you beat those up for a little while, and then you run out of space, and you go, okay, what do I do with all this stuff? Okay, well, I think there's guys back there, and you run back and you start clicking on these guys and realize one of them's a merchant. Oh, okay, I can start selling him stuff. Okay, good. Okay, now I can run back out again. And but what really got me was that moment where you realize that EverQuest is very punishing and very hard compared to a lot of games you've played before, which is where I'm wandering around killing level 1 and 2 spiders and little puppies and stuff like that or whatever. And then suddenly I see another Ixar walking by, and I'm thinking, oh, it's one of my homies, probably some guy from the city, some farmer or something, blah, 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 whatever. And he starts running towards me and just wham, just wails, hits me right in the head, then hits me a second time and kills me. What is like some level 13 bandit or
Yeah,
something?
yeah, yeah. The XR foot
But
pad.
I was like, what the hell? Okay, no problem. And I hit the, respawn button or whatever and go back to my bind. And I'm like, where's all the stuff I had? Like, where's my little sword and my bags and stuff? Where's all that stuff?
Yeah.
Is it, oh, did it stay okay? So I wander out back out there and I see my little body out there. And I was like, oh my God, right? And I'm trying to interact with it. And I click on it and I was like, oh, okay. Oh my, so all your stuff stays on your body when you die? What? And then I'm looking at my XP and I was like, didn't I have more XP than that? I thought I was closer to level 3 or whatever than that. And I was like, wait, you lose XP too? And at that point, I think when you discover a game like that, you're gonna have one of two reactions. You're gonna go, fuck that noise, and you're gonna turn it off and you're gonna find another game, or you're gonna go, well, I gotta make sure I don't die. I gotta make sure that like I gotta
Yeah.
know where I am at all times. There's no maps, remember back then either. No in-game
Yeah.
maps. You could go on a website, but I didn't have two screens. I didn't have a second computer. I didn't have a laptop or a phone to be able to look up and well, so if I had maps, later on I figured out because my friend told me he's like, you can just go to the library and print off the maps. I just spent like, $10 at the library and printed off every EQ map and put them in a binder. I
Oh,
was like, oh, that's a
yeah.
pretty good idea. So I never ended up doing that, but you know what I mean? But those were your map options, and they were literally hand-drawn maps that some guy had gone around and coordinated like all around the entire map, the coordination, then laid it out on a piece of paper and drawn it with colored pencils. Remember those maps, the
Oh,
colored pencil
yeah.
ones? Like he's filling in the water with blue colored pencil and then taking a nice scanned photo of it back in the day. And yeah, so that aspect of it got me too, was the challenge of like, oh, there's no map. Like I have to remember where I am because I've always been very interested in maps and very my wife tells me I'm very like 3D spatial awareness is really good, especially compared to hers. I'm always like moving her around stores and grabbing her, and we'll get lost, and she'll be like, "Where are we?" And I'm like, "We're on the other side of the parking lot where we just were. We're on this street. We're heading north." You know what I mean? Like, so for me, EverQuest was also really fun in that aspect of like, oh, I have to remember like these mountains are on my left. Okay, I'm going to skirt around these mountains. Okay, then there's this little desert area on the right, but that's too dangerous. But okay, if I follow the desert area on the left, there's that tower I want to go to, Kern's Tower. I didn't know Kern's Tower was super high level at the time, but I was trying to get there without dying. And I was like, but I had to remember every time I died and where I was going and try to turn around and run back to the guards if I had to try to run away. You couldn't just, there was no compass. There was sense heading. I didn't know what sense heading was yet. And even if I did, my skill would have been too low. So I didn't know sense heading was a thing yet, basically. No map, no compass, nothing. You just literally got to remember, okay, this landmark, just like you would in real life. You know, this tree is on my left. I got to move over here and then turn right, and then I'm going to move over and go up this hill, and then I'm going to see a road, and then I'm going to take the road back to Cavalis. Okay, cool. You have to memorize all that stuff back then. And the world gets more complex and big. You have to memorize more and more.
Well, that's the thing that you're making me think of as of, I was why I think I got so gripped into the experience of playing EverQuest was because up until that time in my gaming career, when it came to multiplayer games like Counter-Strike or even Doom being in first person, you knew that you were probably going to die. Counter-Strike, you died every round or you won the round. So the awareness that you were in a game, the length of time that you were in immersed into the experience was start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. But with EverQuest, it was like it took me so long to get my bearings. It took me so long to figure out what I was doing, and then figuring out spatial awareness, like you're saying, where I'm at in the world, and it's all in first person mode. And then I have a chat bar where I'm talking with real people, so my personality is now involved, and I'm having to use my like I don't know if it's okay to ask somebody something, or I don't know like if I saw a really powerful looking character, it was like I'd never talk to that guy. Like he's way too like there's no way he'd even respond to me. And so it was like the social dynamic starts to play. Then all of a sudden I'm in a state of immersion where I actually it actually feels real. It feels like this is a living, breathing experience in a world that's infinite, not just a finite, we'll beat this level, survive this round type situation.
Yeah, I hear you. Because even back then, in the early days, the people who were getting to the end game were really kind of tight-lipped about what was going on. They weren't sharing a lot of secrets. They weren't sharing even a lot of screenshots. I remember one of the first when Velius came out and they started raiding Velius, I remember one of the first like teasers I got of what Temple of Ishan was like was I forgot which guild, Afterlife or one of the top guilds that you would watch the newsletters for. You check in every couple of days and be like, oh my God, they posted another newsletter, and you get to see what kind of loot they got and what kind of screenshots they had of their guild chats. And that was how I kind of kept up with what was going on in the end game. And they were talking about going into this Temple of Ishan place, and it was back then it took so long they would like clear 3 or 4 dragons into the north area, and then they would camp overnight, and then come back the next day and continue their raid. So the
Wow.
screenshot of some cleric sitting on the cliff, like overlooking the lava pit in Temple of Ishan and like the Vulak area way up top. And it was just some screenshot of that. And that was like, camping out for the night, ready to come back tomorrow. And that
That
was
is
like, oh
so
my God,
cool.
there's some dragon temple up there. Who knows what it even looks like? But these guys are just in there, 50 of them or whatever, just doing it.
So
So,
where are you at, where are you at this time then? You've got your XR Shadowknight. What server were you on?
actually, this was so the server I was on with the XR Shadowknight, I do not even remember because it was whatever server that my friend's friend was playing on. But when we ended up, when I did end up playing a whole group of my friends all got into it all independently in different times, but they were all like, it wasn't like one group of friends that I got in, like all 5 of us started playing. 4 or 5 of my friends all started playing, but a lot of them didn't know each other. So that a whole nother friend that I had starts playing, and the server that he played on was Terrace Stool, and that was the one that we just decided to start joining on because we're like, oh, when we all want to be on the same server. So me and some friends that all started playing after that all kind of joined Terrace Stool.
So paint me a picture then of your life. How old are you at this time? Are
Must
you
have been, 'cause this was right before Velius came out, so 2000, I guess. So I must have been 19.
and you do you have your own PC now, or are you still using the family PC?
So my parents asked me what I wanted for graduating high school, and I had realized that I wanted to start gaming, so I asked them for an Alienware PC.
Oh,
And
very nice.
I mean, they were expensive at the time, so I couldn't get like a nice Alienware PC. So I got like an entry level low one. So
I
the
used to
graphics
look
card
at
was
that
still
one.
not very good. The RAM was still not super high, but it was no longer using the family computer and literally 7 minute zoning times. You know what I mean? Like I would go to zone from Verona V into Lake of Iloma, and then I would get up and make myself a snack because I knew it was going to take me 6, 7 minutes to get into, and then you do that thing where you accidentally hit back and you take
Oh no.
a And then the very first time I took a boat was because so I will back up a little bit. When I started my own character, got my own account, got my one of my parents to tell me that I could, give them some money every month, and they would use their credit card to pay for this service for me because, to pay for a service, I don't have a credit card. I was 18, 19. I didn't have debit cards weren't really common yet. So I didn't have any way to pay for this thing. So I got them to do that for me, had started playing on their computer a little bit. So I guess I must have been 18 because I was just about to graduate from high school and I was kind of late. Like I wasn't an early kid. I was a 18-year-old right after high school. Like the summer after, like a month after high school ended, I was 18. Um, so I started a high elf paladin because I wanted to play a paladin. I thought that was a good. I like paladins. I always liked the idea of paladins in D&D and stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna try a paladin. Dwarf seemed like a good one to start with, but I didn't like how short they were compared to everything else. Like I really didn't like the idea of like having to look up and jump over stuff and whatever. So I was like, no, I'm gonna make a normal size race. So I went for high elf because I thought they looked pretty cool. Um, but I didn't really like Fadark very much. Like Creator Fadark was okay, but it was really big, it was really dark, even though I had like the medium infravision, not like the good all night vision, but some night vision. It was really dark at night. And my friend was a wood elf, but he was reading a lot of guides and talking to a lot of high-end players compared to what the gaming that I was doing. So he was like, let's go center ourselves in Freeport. It's right there next to where everybody does all the trading on the server, this place called East Common Lands. So we'll be right there so we could easily like sell and upgrade our stuff without having to travel a ton. Let's just level up that path. So I spent most of my leveling up time in Antonica in that area. So
Right.
that's like my earliest memories are mostly there. I kind of went to Crushbone for a minute and then hopped on a boat. And the first time I took a boat, my zoning time was so bad
You missed
that
the boat.
I missed the boat. I zone
Dang.
in and the boat is 200, 300 yards ahead of me heading in its destination. And I just drop down into the water. And, oh, what the? Oh no, what do I do? Like, and I think I ended up swimming around until I got attacked by a shark and killed and lost my body.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it was a level, 9 body or something like that. And I didn't have much, but it was a lot for back then, you
So
know?
then did you have to get a teleport to get over there?
No, I ended up trying again, um, and getting okay. Like it's the boat. I happened to load a little bit faster, and I ended up getting over there. Just for some reason, that was a particularly long load, and I missed the boat because the computer or the modem, one of the two, was just a little bit slower that time. But I was just like, just the brutality of it. Like I'm trying to relocate and move over to this new place, and then I got to this new place, and my buddy had already been farming there for a little bit, so he hooked me up with like a little bit of, low AC leather stuff or whatever he had on him, and like a sword that was better than the starting sword. So I ended up going over there and starting with kind of the approximate gear that I would have had if I hadn't lost my body. But
Right.
that was when I decided I needed a new PC. I was like, I can't play on the family PC. First of all, I can't share with my family and play this game. And secondly, this thing is way too slow.
Okay, so you get the new PC.
Yeah.
It's Velius is out. You're 18,
Yeah,
19 years
Velios had
old.
just come out.
What is your life like? Are you able to game as much as you want at this time?
Yeah, so I didn't have a lot of responsibilities. I was out of high school, but I didn't start college. So I was working at my parents owned a paintball field.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So on the weekends I would work there, but that meant I only worked Saturday and Sunday, and I made enough money to cover I didn't have a lot of expenses. My rent at my first apartment was with 4 other people, two people and their spouses, so 5 of us total renting a place that we got from one of theirs, family members who was like $900 at the time. So my rent was like $250. And I'm making $200, $300 a week, working 2 days a week. Didn't have a lot of other expenses in my life. So I was just literally smoking weed and playing EverQuest for like a long time.
How far did you get? Like, what is this is your first EverQuest run then?
Yeah.
Was that your main, the Paladin, High Elf Paladin?
Yeah. High Elf Paladin. I named him Raban, which, even though he wasn't like a big, evil, gnarly guy, it was named after the Dune character because I really like the Dune movie.
Wow, I thought it was named after the FF14 character. Because
Yeah.
that was your Paladin that we were playing, we were talking on the game.
Yeah.
It's
No, no,
named after a Dune
yeah.
character.
Yeah, one of the bad guys is named Raban, and it's
Oh,
spelled
okay.
a little differently. But I was just sitting there trying to think of a name, and I was like, I really like that name. That sounds fun. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's the name I picked. Um, I progressed really slow compared to my other friend. I was really into experiencing stuff. I had a lot of anxiety about starting and being in groups, or I would get frustrated because groups would break up, or people would leave too suddenly, or go link dead, and never come back, or they end up sucking, or just the idea of getting a good group was really hard and frustrating for me. So I would do a lot of slow soloing to level up. So my friend who was a bard was just like using guides, leveling up fast, getting in groups whenever he wanted because he's a bard compared to an undergeared tank. He can easily get into tons of groups. He can fat travel around really quickly. I had no Spirit of Wolf, no invisibility, nothing like that. He had all the toolkits of a bard. So he was leveling up way faster than I was, but he was kind of schooling me, tutoring me, like letting me know, check this website out and do this quest and, come here with me and you will farm this together and that kind of thing. So he was kind of helping me figure out more about how the game worked than just going in totally raw.
So how high did the Raban get to? How high of a level?
So he got max level eventually, and I ended up being a raider, but um like multiple X packs back raider. Like people are keying up for Vex Thal, and my guild is killing Kunark dragons
Right.
because they've way moved on from Kunark dragons and stuff, and there's less competition for that older stuff, and it's beginning level raid stuff. So I pretty much skipped a lot of the classic stuff because I never killed Vox or Nagy on my first EverQuest run. Actually, I've never been to a Vox or Nagy raid. I've only killed Vox or Nagy in like Small Man or like Solo or the Happy Hardcore event or whatever it was where you went and fought her as a raid mob, like updated, but I've never fought
in era.
just Vox and Nagy in era and classic and that kind of thing before the level restrictions when you had to be level, 48, 49, 50 or whatever it was. I've never actually done that.
We're so I know the type of player you are today,
Uh,
and today you're really helpful and you've got a strong personality and you communicate well. Was I guess those were kind of attributes that you learned because in the beginning you had a tough time grouping with people, and were you when you were in your guild
yeah.
doing that content, were you um what was that experience like for you? Was it this like how was it different then versus today?
It was a lot different. I was a lot more casual. I was a lot more like follow the leader, just hope somebody figures something out that to do and I can join. I would look stuff up but not really be hardcore about necessarily planning stuff. I would make poor gear decisions because I thought like, oh, this looks pretty good, and not realize that like I should have gone for this piece of gear because it's got better AC and AC is better than hit points. Took me a long time to figure stuff like that out. Now I'm a lot more grindy with my thoughts when it comes to games and what I'm doing, and I like to do stuff like plan out my best path and know exactly what I'm going to do and kind of min max compared to the earlier days when I was a lot more casual and a lot more just kind of having fun and figuring it out. And oh yeah, I could go grind in this dungeon and sit forever in LFG, or I could just sit out here in this outdoor zone and kill rhinos or whatever. Nowadays I'd be like, I'm not gonna sit here and kill rhinos all day. It's a waste of my time. Like I'm gonna find a group. If there's no group together, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? All right, let's go. Three of us will go, and then we'll find three more people. You know what I mean? So my
Yeah,
mentality playing is a lot different now. But I think that is because a lot of EverQuest is knowledge.
yeah,
Like the more you know, and the more you can do without having to look it up, and the more like confident you feel about doing actions in the game, the more you can get done and the more you can get out of your time.
yeah. So we met through another podcast, Foreverquest.
Yep.
So I want to talk a little bit about that, and I also want to ask you about your yeah, let's talk about that. Were you playing EverQuest before you started listening to Foreverquest? This is in current times.
No, so fast forward, this is like pandemic times, like just after the pandemic was like we realized everything was not going to fall apart immediately, but things were going to be different for a while. And we had just moved to Phoenix from California where I lived. So we moved to Phoenix, new city, and oh my God, there's like restrictions everywhere. People aren't socializing. You can barely go into any stores. So I'm not going to meet any new people. So, all right, I guess I'll just, get a job and just do my thing. And I just jumped on Spotify one day and I was like, I'm sick of listening to music. I listen to a podcast. What do I want to listen to? What I haven't thought about in a while was EverQuest. So I just typed the word EverQuest into Spotify and see what pops up. And I think the first thing that popped up was that purple icon for EverQuest. And I was like, oh, it's two guys just hanging out and playing EverQuest after not playing it for a long time. Yeah, cool. I'll start listening to these guys. They sound fun. And yeah, they were really entertaining and very intriguing to listen to. And they talked about more than just the game. So that was nice. It's like, oh, okay, this guy like working in their own lives and their own thoughts and talking about how EverQuest is related to other things than just or than just games. They're also related to real life. And they had a good flow and they were very, very entertaining. So they were
And
starting talking about their experience with P99.
right.
And I was like, oh, that sounds good, man. Free EverQuest. I don't have to pay for live. And it's like it really just like our old hardcore EverQuest. That sounds really good. So I loaded up P99 and started on Ixar Necro. And I was like, I'm gonna be a little more independent this time, and I'm not gonna be a, paladin that has to rely on everybody. I'm gonna have a good toolkit. I'm gonna be able to invis, and I'm gonna be able to, sucker, and I'm gonna be able to gate and all this other stuff. I'm playing it and I was like, oh my God, I forgot how much of a grind this game is. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, this game is a grind. I'm just like grinding and grinding for days and days and days. And I think it took me like 7 or 8 days of playing pretty hardcore to get like level 8 or
Right.
something like that. Or and I was just like, and I felt pretty accomplished at that. And I was like, I was doing a pretty good job. And I was like, this is incredible. And I'm listening to more and more episodes and they start talking about how they're getting raiding in P99 and then they're getting a little burned out and all this other stuff and they're looking at all this other stuff and they start talking about this thing that's starting up called Mischief. And I think they had Zayd on at that time, and I didn't know anything about celebrity EverQuest at all. So I didn't know
Me
who Zayd
either.
was. I didn't know who Bobby Bick was. I didn't know who Level Up Larry was. I didn't know who any of these people were.
I didn't even know the legends they always talk about. Like, is the Sazabi in our guild the legend Sazabi that I always hear about?
Yeah, he's the guy who's been playing with Zayd for all these TLPs for like forever, and you see him in all of the old videos and stuff, the old screenshots of like, oh, this is also an Agnar killing Vox, and Sazabi's there.
Dude, this is blowing my mind. It's so crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man,
I
some of
didn't
these.
know there were super like I knew the ones on the server I played on because they had epic weapons and I would just be like, but I didn't like, yeah, you're right. There's a whole realm of like ultimate players or like the Drama Quest podcast is great because it gives you the timeline of all the big players of all the big guilds, stuff I didn't have a clue about.
Yeah, because I didn't get into the TLPs. Like I remember them being a thing, but I didn't get into them at all. When I so I played EverQuest from, late Kunark, beginning of Velius was when I started leveling up and everything. And I played all the way until Dragons of Norrath came out. And when Dragons of Norrath came out, I was messing around in Omens of War content, like group content, trying to like farm, AC Augs and get XP and that kind of thing. And I was like, this is absolutely brutal, man. Like I cannot keep up with these things. Like these mobs are terrible for me. Like I couldn't pass trials. It took me so many attempts to pass my Plane of Justice trial because I was such a paper tank. And then tipped when Gates of Discord came out because I thought I wanted to get into the good XP zones, which turns out later I couldn't even like tank them. I could not pass the tip trial to save my life until I found an enchanter to finally come with us and like his DPS from having a charmed pet got us through. But I could not finish that last boss on tipped as a paper tank. I just couldn't.
Wow.
So Dragons of Norrath comes out. A lot of my friends had already either burned out and stopped playing EverQuest, stopped playing EverQuest to go play EverQuest 2, or stopped playing EverQuest to go play WoW. So I was like, not a lot of my friends are even hanging on to this game anymore. I can't keep up. My one friend is raiding the new stuff when it comes out, and I'm raiding 2X. I'm not even in Vexthal yet. I know, I mean, I've done Temple of Vishan and Sleeper's Tomb a couple of times, but this is Plains of Power. You know what I mean? Or past Plains of Power era. Or sorry, I'd started into Plains of Power, so I had done like one raid all the way through Planet Time over the course of a couple of months. But we were level 65 and had Gates of Discord AAs and all this other stuff to help us. So we were way behind. Um, I'm like, I'm never going to see any of this new content, and none of my friends are even playing anymore. What am I doing anymore? So I just decided to quit. And I didn't play EverQuest for years and years and years. Like I never touched it, didn't think about it. And then my friend who I got introduced or who I had introduced to the game had kept playing, gotten a job where he worked so early in the morning and then worked in the evening that he decided to join a Euro guild so that he could play in that gap between his jobs with them in the evening. And it was for him, it was like morning, early afternoon. So he would do one job, raid, do his other job, and then sleep. He ended up meeting a girl on in his guild who was like, "Oh, I live in the same state as you. Oh my God, I live within like an hour and a half drive from you. We should visit." And now they're married. Uh,
Wow.
so they ended up starting a relationship and everything. He was in a guild that was doing like live brand new stuff. You know what I mean? Like stuff launches, boom, we're on it the day of. We're figuring out these mechanics. I forget Darkwind, I think the guild was called. Um, so he was doing all that. And on Saturdays, he and a bunch of people decided they were going to gear up alts and boxes by doing older content. And he told me, hey, come on this server and play around. I'll help power level you a little bit and we'll get you up to the 40s and 50s where you can start looting this stuff and you can come with us and do some of this content you never got to see. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did that. And then I got to see the some of the progression for Gates of Discord, and then I got a back flag, so I got to see Tagfi, the end zone of Gates of Discord. Then we did Anguish flagging and signets, so then I got to raid. Citadel of Anguish for a little while, and then we did Depths of Dark Hollow stuff. So I got to do the Blood Raids, the Spider, and all those guys or whatever, the Wolf, Werewolf people and stuff, and then start raiding um, whatever it is, doing Demi-Plane of Blood. So I got to see all that content from like it's kind of challenging because we're on boxes, but not that challenging because 10 of us are mains, so we're just kind of ripping through 10 levels above, 5 levels above. But I got to experience it and get back into it. Um, so then that was like my second EverQuest phase, and then I got out of that again just because I lost interest again. And
Yeah.
then my third EverQuest phase was Mischief.
So COVID's happening, you're listening to ForeverQuest, you start up a P99 Necromancer XR.
Hmm.
And so I guess this is where I come into the story because I was started listening too, and then I missed the I had to catch up on like 60 episodes when I first discovered ForeverQuest. So I caught up when a little after Zayd had came on, and after Zayd's episode is when I downloaded it. So because Zayd gets on, he got on there. He's a convincing person.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah, that's why he's a good raid leader. He's very much like by the end of that episode, I was like, I should play EverQuest. Like it's good for me. Like I should do it for myself. Like I owe it to myself to play EverQuest.
I didn't like you were naming the Theater of Blood and the TAC V. I didn't even know the names of the dragons. I knew they existed and I'd seen pictures. I knew the sleeper, but like I don't even know if I'd even saw pictures. So the idea that it could be done was so attractive. And yeah, so so share a little bit about what the experience was like for you. When did it stop kind of becoming a grind for you and you felt like you were really having a good time with the game?
Mischief, because it had a lot of the quality of life increases that I wanted. Like you could get Chrono without having to buy it if you wanted, or if you had a little extra money, you could buy Chrono, and then through the station store and then sell it and have in-game currency. And at the time, I was like, I mean, EverQuest is a challenge, but I've done leveling a bunch of times. I don't really need to prove to myself that I can grind and level again. So I'm gonna use some money, and I dumped a little bit of money and bought like a chrono or two, sold them for gear, and then bought like XP potions and stuff like that from the store, the DB store. And I was like, this is great, man. The quality of life is a lot better. And I realized you die and your body doesn't hold your corpse. I was like, oh, so I could just die and just log off and not care. Like I don't have to like invest the same kind of time and energy and resources that I used to have to invest to play a game like this. The quality of life is just way higher, but the enjoyment is still there and the challenge is still there in different ways. So that was when it felt more like, well, this is fun. This isn't like, doesn't feel like my second job. This feels like a game I'm playing. So
And yeah, if I remember right, you started as a Necro and then you switched to a Shadow Knight.
yeah, when I started the server, I was like, once again, I wanted to play something different and have utility, and I thought Necro would be kind of fun. So I started playing a Necro, had a good time doing solo, had a good time getting into groups every once in a while. Um, but when I joined Faceless and started raiding, I was like, I am not doing very good compared to all these other Necros, and I'm trying to ask questions and learn and figure out what gear I need and what spells I should cast. And oh, I need to cast this spell a lot more than I'm casting right now. Oh, okay, I'll change it up. And no matter what I was doing, I was like inching up the parse, but I was still like way at the bottom, way under everybody else. And I was like, I'm not doing very well. But I was attending all the raids, had tons of great RA, went to all the bad phones, making lots of friends. So I was like, that's cool. They like me. But then Luckland comes out and I'm starting to really like think about grinding AA and all this other stuff I got to do. And I was like, I'm really not having that much fun. And I was just talking about it with Jadwin, who was Sval, the monk at the time. And he was like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "I'm kind of getting bored of Monk." He's like, "I'm kind of getting bored of just sitting there and pressing attack." He's like, "I'm thinking about changing it up, playing a caster. I'm thinking about Necro." I was like, "Well, I'm thinking about changing it up." I was like, "What if I traded you a bunch of my caster gear and you traded me a bunch of your melee stuff and I made a new character?" He's like, "Okay, sounds good." It's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I was like, "Sweet." So I rolled up a paladin. And a druid friend in the guild helped me like power level through some of the levels, bringing her with me and running through some areas and damage shielding the crap out of me and healing me and everything. So I leveled that up pretty quickly, and I was like, sweet, I'm having a lot of fun. This is great. Paladin's fun. I remember this is right on. So then I get to 60, get all the gear dropped on him that I can. Okay, cool. I got all this new gear, blah, blah, blah. Ready to go. Get into a Velks group, start grinding, get like 6 AA into a grind with a potion on. Something happens and somebody dies, and then everybody starts dying, and I was like, oh crap. And then I look around and then I die. And I was like, if I had feigned death, that wouldn't have happened.
Wow.
The group ended a little while after that, and I was like, okay. And I just gated back to where I was going and went to the shared bank and put all of my stuff into the shared bank and logged off that paladin and rolled a Shadow Knight instead.
Wow.
I played the Shadow Knight was what I played when I came back to live that second time and did TAC V and all that other stuff. So I had already kind of had fun playing with the Shadow Knight toolkit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I kind of knew how stuff worked as far as like, okay, feign death and snaring and all that stuff. I'd kind of learned all that a tiny bit, but I was like, I think I really want to give this like a serious go this time. So I rolled Paladin, or I sorry, rolled Shadow Knight, and then that was that. I was like, this is way more fun than Paladin is, and I think this is the class I'm sticking with. So
What is it for you about you got the I guess the utility,
yeah,
the did you ever sense like I want to talk a little bit about the guild too. So I've never played with the types of players that we play with in our guild. Like the amount of information, knowledge, intention, willingness to put the effort in and to be great at their role, whatever that role may be, and like a collective atmosphere. Like I'm something about like I love speed running. I love trying to see if things can get done efficiently and effectively, like so when you're in the guild and you're leveling up and you're figuring these things out and you're playing, did when did you feel confident to like step in as a tank or step in as a during a raid, like step in and be a useful part of that raid?
during the Vexthal era for Mischief, because I just gotten the Shadow Knight up and we had just started getting into Vexthal, so I finished the Vexthal key on him. So I did two Vexthal keys that server, one for my Necro and one for my Shadow Knight. I started really we didn't do a lot of the skipping that we did on Teek.
No, we did. That was when I joined, when we were in, I
Yeah, so
joined
we
before.
were grinding through that trash.
Yeah.
So we'd have large trash clears, and that's kind of where Paladins and Shadow Knights shine, in my opinion, in that era is face tanking lots of mobs. You know, six mobs come in, you grab two of them, this guy grabs two of them, this guy grabs one, this guy grabs one, and boom, we all lock them down so nobody else gets hurt.
Was someone coaching you how to do that while you
No, that
were
was all just stuff I'd learned from being a paladin in the first place back in the day and learning all the hard lessons of like how taunt works, all
right?
that stuff, and then perfecting that stuff playing with my friends' guild on Saturdays with their alts and really learning even more how to do that stuff and getting tips from um, people who had Shadow Knight mains or who boxed Shadow Knights or whatever and would tell me like you need to start using these spells more or hey, you're using taunt kind of incorrectly because at the time I would use taunt was just like, oh, I lost aggro, boom, hit taunt. Okay, done. I got aggro back. And then realized that one of the main things about taunt is you want to immediately do something after you get aggro back to step you up above. Because taunt, say, taunt is like numbers, So say I'm at 9,999, and then this monk goes up to 10,000. Now he's at 10,500. I'm still down at 10,000. Okay, well, if I taunt, that brings me up to exactly where he is, but the monk is still going faster than I am. So he's quickly going to just take that threat back. But if I am behind and then I taunt and get back up to him, and then the very first thing I do is cast one of my instant terrors or cast a snare, I'm going to pop up right here. And now I'm slightly above him as we're both ticking up and up and up and up, and I can keep casting aggro spells to widen that gap. Does that make sense?
Dude, you just explained a mechanic I've never known how it worked.
I had to learn the hard way on my paladin because when I very first started, I literally was spamming taunt while I
Yeah.
was fighting. I was just like, yeah, getting my aggro nice and high. Boom. Yeah, none of this, and I wouldn't understand. Like, well, this thing ran away and started attacking you guys. I don't know. I'm attacking it. And I don't know why it's not coming back. I mean, I hit taunt and it came back. Okay, well, I guess it's on me again. Okay, cool. But I didn't understand, like, took me a long time as a paladin to get that rhythm down of like, oh, okay, I should taunt and then immediately hit it with a stun. And now, boom, boom, boom. Now just hit it with a stun every now and again. And as a paladin, I realize that even now, as a Shadow Knight, I'm very much in this mentality of my aggro is the most important thing that I can do to help the group and the raid. My DPS is second. I'm not a DPS class. Shadow Knights can do some pretty decent DPS. I don't do that though. I don't get sweaty trying to do DPS. My job is to hold aggro. So I'll sit there and swing my weapon less to cast snare more often so that the mob never turns and attacks the rogue. Because then the rogue can spend the entire time going nuts with his DPS, which is his job.
Right.
He does DPS really well. Problem is, if my aggro is weak, the mob is turning around and facing the wrong direction, and he misses backstabs, or worse, turns around and hits him and damages him, and now he has to back off and stop attacking, or gets killed, or the healer has to take his mana and heal the rogue up instead of me. I'm not doing my job right. And the reason I did that was so I could swing my axe a couple more times and do a couple hundred more damage when this guy could have done 5,000 more damage, backstabbing twice or whatever it is, you know? So I learned really early on that my job is to sit here and be an aggro machine, not to do damage.
Right.
So I stunned a lot more than a lot of the paladins that I watched, and even now I snare and use terror a lot more than um, some paladins or some Shadow Knights I've seen in groups, or even some of the ones on raids. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's better than another play style, but that's just the play style I've always been really comfortable with. Like my job is to get punched in the face, so I have to make my face really, really sturdy,
Uh-huh.
and I have to make it really ugly so that they always want to punch me. What do I have to do to be really ugly and really sturdy and get punched in the face? That's my job. That's the
Uh-huh.
tank's job. So
Yeah, and so that's kept your engagement then that you found your class.
yeah, exactly. Instead of feeling like I didn't really know what I was doing and I was adding some damage to the thing, and oh, I'd be a mana battery every once in a while as a necro, I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing, and I didn't feel like I had a place. This time I'm immediately jumping up and tanking mobs when they come in, keeping people alive. I'm watching, I'm tabbing through everything and realizing that like, oh, that mob is about to is moving. Oh, he's running over the clerics. I can run over and taunt it before it gets to the clerics. You know, like really staying on top of that stuff engaged me a lot more than playing the necro. Playing the necro, I was just like, this is okay, I guess, but I mean. I'm just casting a dot every now and then and casting a nuke and sending my pet in. Oh, I forgot to send my pet in that time. I didn't do damage, you know? So I just wasn't that as much fun. But now playing a Shadow Knight, I have a ton of fun, whether I'm doing stuff solo or in a group or on a raid.
One of the coolest parts about coming into the Faceless from the Foreverquest Discord and the Foreverquest podcast was so I'd never done any of this stuff. So like when we were in Vexal when I joined, one of the coolest parts was being in a raid and then watching Doomsdee, watching your character like go take initiative to grab a target and start tanking it. And I'm just one of the faceless people going, that's fucking Doomsday, dude. He's doing it. Like, because I know there's hundreds of us, but there's you out there doing a role that was super important. And I felt like because we knew each other, it was like I don't have that experience in any other games. Like the idea that I have this type of connection with a person, and then to see them perform in a inflection point and a situation that matters. Like it really mattered. If I feel like it matters that we do well, and like um yeah, I don't know. I don't really get that in a lot of other games. It's
Yeah, that's one of the things that always brings me back to EverQuest is that idea of like we have to coordinate and be a team together or this isn't going to work out. Like
yeah.
if the healers are not paying attention, people are going to die from not getting healed. If the slowers are not paying attention and the mobs are all attacking at full speed too fast, too often, the people are going to die. If the tanks are not picking up loose mobs and they're just wandering around wherever they want and getting aggro on bards and healers and support people, they're going to die. It's going to slow us down. We're either not going to succeed or it's going to take us a lot longer to succeed.
And that's really what it is, isn't it? Because the
And my
most
guild back in the day
valuable
was very much, sorry, but my guild back in the day, the Reavers of Fate on Terrastool, we were very much a fumbling around barely get this done. You know what I mean? Like I doubt my raid leader was worried about like having bards with the melees or having, clerics in the same group as me and warriors so they can easily keep an eye on them back before Xtar, stuff like that. I don't think we were doing that kind of stuff. So we weren't really, in my opinion, we were having fun, we were doing our thing, but we weren't being as respectful of each other's time as we really could have. Whereas when I joined Faceless, I'm looking at this Discord. Like I learned how to use Discord basically from joining Faceless, and I learned all the stuff of new Everquest and TLPs and stuff from being in Faceless. So I was kind of faking it till I make it. You know what I mean? I applied and they're like, do you know how to raid Everquest content? And I was like, yeah, I've done this stuff. And I get there and they're like, oh, meet us at the AOC. And I was like, well, what
What
the
is
hell's an
that?
AOC? And I'm
Yeah.
looking on my map and I was like, AOCs aren't marked on Braywell's maps. I knew enough to get Braywell's maps, but I didn't know that they weren't marked. So everybody's like, yeah, we're at the AOC for, Sky Shrine. I was like, what the fuck? Like, trying to
Yeah.
figure it out and without giving away that I don't know what I'm doing. And at the time,
Yeah.
I didn't have a mic. So it took me like 5 days being in the guild before I got a mic. And they were about to kick me because they thought I was a spy from one of the other guilds.
Oh, wow.
Because I wasn't willing to talk, they thought I was a spy. I was just in there to figure out what was going on and keep them from getting open world targets and stuff.
Yeah. Spoiler alert if you're listening, he was a spy, but he converted.
I am, yeah. The gig did not pay as well as they should have. So
Yeah.
no, it's but so that's where I learned like how to hardcore raid was through Faceless because for one reason is they make it so easy to learn. Like they put up spreadsheets, they put up guides, the forums, not the forums, I'm old school. The Discord all has areas in it that have, go here if you want to learn how to do this, go here if you want to learn where the trade skilling stuff is, go to the pinned messages in this part of the thing, and it'll teach you all about these three important quests you gotta know how to do. Like they're super organized. Like they have EverQuest down to a science.
Yeah, that's what I don't even know. Like I never had the experience of fumbling through raids and getting three pieces of loot for 8 hours of work. I've never had that super hardcore experience, but the hardcore mentality also is something that I mean, I don't know. And I remember us talking about this during Mischief times. Like, I don't know if I could go back to playing another way.
I don't think I could. Zaid mentioned the other day in comms or in chat or something that he was like starting to feel kind of burned out on the free trade and potentially looking forward to maybe playing a TLP with the standard rule system. And I was like, I don't think I could, man. I don't want to go back to stopping everything we're doing to bid three pieces of loot that you then have to loot. And if you don't like this class, oh well. Like, you know what I mean? Like I like the free trade ability, the ability to make a second character. Like if I wanted to make a second clone Shadowknight to be able to have a second set of lockouts, I can and just throw all of my gear at it and it's basically the same character. The AAs I got to make up, but and some of the flagging may be different, but for the most part, it's a clone. Can't do that on a regular server. The level of gear that we can attain on a free trade server with extra loot, like the ones we've been playing on, is I don't think I can go back to that. I don't think I can go back to wearing bronze armor and getting one piece of raid gear every month. You know what I mean? Because that's just how rare it is compared to free trade where people are buying it on the side, so they don't need it as much on raids, and we're getting 9 pieces of loot and all this other stuff, like I just can't go back to the original rules.
Yeah, no, I've thought about I was thinking about it yesterday because I'm on my third listen of Drama Quest. I've listened to the whole series twice already. And this is the reason this podcast even exists is because I want more stuff to listen to.
Right.
So I was thinking about it, and the reason I like so much playing is because of the people I'm playing with and the attitude and the challenge that is created when we're playing well. And in the sense that I did the Planes of Power launch, and the 29 hours in this chair was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my entire life.
I bet.
And it was like one of the most rewarding things too. And it was, I don't know, it's like I mean, I used to be an athlete and I never really was present for the camaraderie that I experienced while we were playing games on Saturdays and Friday nights and stuff. I almost feel like I was kind of like just there. I just knew that I could, so I should type situation, but I never really felt connected with the actual sport itself.
Mhm.
But here it's because I love EverQuest so much, and I'm around a bunch of people that also love EverQuest. It the idea that we would do challenging things and try to push the limits is what seems to excite me the most. Because the loot stuff kind of fell off for me. Like it's nice to get the loot, but I find myself, yeah, I guess I just find myself enjoying the experience of accomplishing things with other people.
Yeah, I think so too. It's nice to be able to like actual like I played WoW and Final Fantasy 14 a little bit, dabbled in both of those games, and they are very fun games. They're very engaging games. They have good mechanics. They have good, very cinematic fights, very, cool cinematics themselves. Like there's lots of really good things about those games, but it doesn't feel like an MMO. It feels like a first-person video game that you play in little groups to do some content. You know what I mean? Like I play my first person game until I need to go to this dungeon, and then me and four other people or whatever go to this dungeon together, and then I never see them again. Don't know who they
Right.
are. Don't remember their names. They're gone. Why? Next group of dungeons I get to, totally different group of people. Next group of dungeon I get to, totally different group of people. Get to the first set of tier of raids, raid with a bunch of people I've never heard of before, never see them again, right? So it's got that very first person closed off feel to it, even though it's an MMO. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas EverQuest, you sit in Kearns and you LFG and you chat with this guy and you go, okay, well, let's kill together, blah, blah, blah. And you chat and you have a good time with this guy for 4 hours or whatever. And you're like, okay, what time are you playing tomorrow? Oh, yeah, I'm playing tomorrow at the same time. Oh, yeah, me too. When I get off work. Okay, cool. Bam. You log on the next day, he's on your friends list. You guys are fighting, you guys are playing together again, right? You're not playing the next, you're not moving on from Kearns to the next dungeon. And then, sometimes you are playing with a whole different group of people, but you end up playing with the same people and forming like, relationships with these people, friendships and camaraderie and teammate kind of aspects to it. Like, oh, I know this guy's really super good about stunning when the mob comes in, so I'll bring the mob in, he'll stun it, and then I'll run over and grab it. So I know I got a second to deal with this mob because he's, you learn those things, or this guy's a little slow when it comes to slowing, so I got to make sure I don't bring too many at once. He's good, but I don't, I don't want to nag him about his job, so I'm not going to try to get him to slow faster. I'm just going to adjust how I play a little bit. You know what I mean? Or I had a rogue friend, and he told me that I was one of the few tanks he ever grouped with that gave a crap about where the rogue was and gave a crap about
Wow.
the positioning of the back of the mob and didn't just let the rogue figure it out. Like we would get into a groove of playing, and I'd be like, okay, well, the mob's coming in from these two directions. I'm going to sit in this corner and grab the mob, and then it's going to come forward. And then every time I fight a mob, it's going to be facing this way. So the rogue just has to stand on the opposite side of that and fight the mobs.
Right.
And he complimented me one time in the middle of us playing. He's like, most people don't think about little stuff like that, and you worked that out and it made it like just faster for us. I don't have to constantly dance around trying to get to the back of the mob. And to me, that aspect is like what you get from organized sports and playing that kind of stuff when you're younger is that idea that like pass the basket to this guy because he's really good at shooting from the outside, but I'm not going to pass it if he's running from the inside because he's not very good inside the paint or whatever it is. When I used to play a little basketball, um, I got that with EverQuest because you're doing team stuff, you're doing coordinated things, and furthermore, it's like an actual ongoing relationship. So
Right.
that's what always brings me back to it is like if I want to just play a fun video game and enjoy content and stuff, I'd do when I've content I haven't seen before, which um or especially the early EverQuest stuff I'd already seen, so I'm not going to play that. I'm going to play a newer game. Um, but it's the idea of like or an actual like friendships you're building up and relationships. Like when I stopped playing Mischief, I stayed in the server and still interacted with the server and chatted with people because I still had friendships and relationships. I didn't just stop playing a game and then stop talking to those people. I mean,
Yeah.
you and Destro and Tonal and a few other people from Mischief I still talk to, even though I don't play on Mischief anymore.
Right.
I mean, before you joined Teek, I was, talking to you every once in a while on Discord still. Tried to keep in touch with, Jeff and those guys from Foreverquest, even after they stopped playing EverQuest, So it's not just about a game. It's a community. You know, um, it's like, yeah, it's just different. EverQuest is different than any other game.
That is, I put something in the Discord the other day because I catch, in in my real life, I'm a very introspective, philosophical person. I'm always contemplating reality and the way in which things occur and why emotions and thoughts appear, just abstract kind of esoteric stuff. And I was just during my leveling up process with Smouse and O'Doyle the Bard, there was moments where it felt like life was expressing itself in an authentic way through these pixels, just as well as they do in my actual reality. That the connection I felt with the world, there was I ceased to see a delineation or different differentiation. I haven't No other game has been able to do that, where I've been like the synchronicities, or I guess the sense of being in the moment and being present for what I'm experiencing was in like absolute alignment in a way that I've never experienced in another game. Um, so yeah, I don't know what was baked into that code or baked into this thing to make it EverQuest how it is. But I do want to ask another question.
Yeah.
How do you how did you end up? Because so when I was playing on Mischief on O'Doyle, and then I took my break, I left, and then I came back during Gates of Discord, I think, to check in
Mhm.
with the guild, and you were raid leading.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I don't remember the very first. I think if I remember right, somebody had dropped out last minute. One of the raid leaders they had said they couldn't come last minute. And I think Zayd had sent me a DM asking if I was willing to lead a split because we'd already done the content a couple times and I knew the fights kind of well. And EQ Progression has a really good website that breaks down all the mobs mechanics pretty well. TACV is pretty easy zone to lead. I was like, okay, I'll do that. I'm pretty sure this is how it happened. So he asked me to lead the first raid. I said, okay. And then he said it went well and asked me if I wanted to be an officer. And I said yes. And he tagged me as an officer and as a raid lead and just went over it real quick with me to make sure I knew what that entailed and went off from there. And I just made sure to really read up on mechanics and ask a few questions that weren't covered by the guides, and make sure I knew what I was doing. And like I had a notepad that I would take notes on of like, okay, this isn't covered in EQ progression, but and also so I wouldn't have to just constantly be flipping onto a website. If I needed quick information, I just had a little binder with me next to my keyboard that had a lot of that pertinent information to it, kill these ads first, mez these, percentages that mob spawn, that kind of stuff. And I just started raid leading. TACV is a very kind of a simple one to get into because it's got a lot of mobs with a lot of different mechanics, but they're not super complex mechanics. And this zone is set up very simply for that because it's trash mob boss, trash mob boss. There's not tons of running around. Nobody's getting lost. You got time to just sit there and to go over the mechanics of this boss, fight the boss. Okay, pull the trash mob. Kick trash mob's dead. Going over the next boss. Okay, move to the room, kill that boss. It's very simple.
How did it feel when you got that first message asking you to do it? Were you nervous, excited?
I was pretty
Did it
excited.
hit?
Like I've always been the type to like volunteering to help out, whether it be at a job or um, at a social club or gaming area. Used to hang out at a comic book store and game with a bunch of people, and I would help out there where I could. I like being the guy that helps out and makes the team runs a little smoother. I've never been I don't want to be the general, but I'll be a captain. You know what I mean? I'll be a lieutenant. I'll be somebody who's an important part of the machine to help more than just being the low level entry guy, soldier, for any use the military metaphor. I don't want to just be an infantryman. I want to be a sergeant or a lieutenant or somebody that has some responsibility beyond just the base level stuff, but I don't want to be the guy that's so in charge that like a ton of responsibility comes down on my head. Like I don't want to lead a guild. I wouldn't want to be a co-leader of a guild. I wouldn't want to be a head DKP officer, but I could be a DKP officer. I could be a raid leader. So yeah, raid leader seemed pretty good, and everybody seemed to respond well. I'd get a lot of tells afterwards, and people Discording me and stuff, telling me they enjoyed being in my raids. So I seem to be doing a good job.
What did it feel like being on comms for the first time with 30, 40 people following your direction?
That was nerve-wracking a little bit because it's like a next level of public speaking. It's not like before when I was calming up and just making jokes or comments or answering people's questions or just having no normal conversations with people after raids or during raids. This was like I'm talking and now everyone in the raid is listening to exactly what I'm saying and is going to do exactly what I say.
You
And
also have an
oh,
army of sweat nerds that are like checking everything you're saying too.
yeah, that too. Yeah, and when you're not, and when I was definitely not the smartest guy in the room. So, like, I often say stuff like, "Okay, we're gonna go here and we're gonna fight this guy on the north side," and then two people would come up. No, we fight him over here on the south side. Oh, yeah, yeah, over here on the south. Well, you're right, the south side. I mean, like a couple moments like that, and kind of waver your, Well, luckily we're not a toxic guild. Like the guild can be a little brash, at times, but in no way is it toxic or make you feel like crap for not knowing, you know what I mean? Everybody would be really supportive and understanding. Tons of people in the guild understand that they're way more knowledgeable than some of the raid leaders, but they're not willing or able to be a raid leader. So they're totally willing to just be there and more knowledgeable than the person leading them, but still have a good time and help out. So overwhelming majority of what I got was that kind of support. At no time did I feel like people were like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. What the fuck? This guy's wasting our time. Even though we would often be some of the slower rates. Like me and Destro were both we had kind of a reputation for being the slower raids, but the fun raids where it was going to be a little more casual. You're going to have a little more fun, a little less worried about being super sweaty and getting tense because we didn't quite, too many people died. And now we're slowed down because we're resing. Who cares? A couple people died. Now we're resing and whatever. Let's have fun. That's the way I like to do it. Like we're still going to get it done. We're not going to waste everybody's time. We're not going to make everybody wait forever for us. But I don't care if we're the last split to finish. So
That's that, what's funny is I in the beginning I always wanted to be in Zaid's raid because it was like I would get a free Zaid podcast basically. Like
yeah,
if I was
especially when he would do like the deep lore dives too. He'd be like,
yes.
"Oh, while we're sitting here betting, did you guys know that this chamber is actually part of this thing? And if you go back to the Karanas, you actually found a totem that told you that this thing exists." Oh, no, I didn't know that. Thank you.
I did not know that. I want to know
Yeah,
more. Like
yeah,
that's
exactly. Would you like to know more? Yes, yes, I would.
and then I would get put in different raid leaders' raids, and I learned to appreciate different styles. And like everybody does. So there's certain more casual or more intense, and then there's more drama type guys that are, talk about other guys that may not be in the guild or whatever. Like, so it's always, I realize like, and well, this is also kind of applies to my own life, and I've come to see that my best ideas about what I think will make me happy don't work out. And that if I can be present for what's actually occurring, that's what I really enjoy. And if I like the less preferences I have, the better time I have, really.
Yeah, that's fair.
So what happened you didn't want to raid lead anymore? Was it too much after a time?
Yeah, just a lot of stuff going on in my real life, a combination of stuff going on in my real life and realizing that I was spending one thing about EverQuest that I do have is a problem with addiction. Like multiple times in my life I have played way more than I should have. I have prioritized it over other more important life things. Like you and your brother were talking about always keeping that in mind as you played EverQuest and being aware of that work-life balance and that idea of like I like playing games, but I'm playing too much right now. I have too many other responsibilities. Real life responsibilities are very important. I often would make a poor decision in life and choose EverQuest over advancing my life, over advancing my relationships, whatever it was. So this was one of those moments where I was like, I feel like I'm getting just way too into this. I'm stressing myself out. I was feeling burned out, like I wasn't keeping up. I was feeling like, um, and this didn't end up being true, but I felt like Zayd and the other raid leaders were upset with me because I was the slowest raid leader every week. Like they were thinking I was wasting everybody's time. And I kind of just burned out and had like a kind of a half meltdown in chat one time with Zayd. It's just like I can't do this. Like I don't think I can do this. And he was just like, no problem. I'll just take you off officer. Like where you're good to go. Like no hard feelings. Just go back to being a raider. I was like, okay. Thanks. So
Nice.
yeah, and it's always been a struggle in my life. In fact, I just checked in with my wife this morning about this before I did the podcast, and I talked to her because I wanted to check. touch bases with her and be like, I know that this game has been stressful on our relationship and my own life throughout the years, and just in the time you've known me, and that's only half the time I've been playing it. And I asked her, I was like, how does my EverQuest life balance seem to you right now? And we talked it out. She said it seems really good. She seems now I'm using it as a reward for good behavior instead of like a default. Like I'm not
Mm.
waking up first thing in the morning and going, oh, I get to play EverQuest all day, and instead of doing, this paperwork I need to get done, or these chores I need to get done, or taking care of the cats I need today. Oh, I'll wait and do that later. I'll get a group and do it after I group for a little while. No, first thing you're going to do is do something responsible. You know what I mean? And earn the right to play video games. And that's kind of the mentality I've had to give myself, is using video games as a carrot, that carrot versus stick metaphor,
Sure.
using video games as a carrot to keep me motivated moving forward. Like, hey, I want to I want to keep doing good things in my life so that I have the time to play video games, not play video games to avoid thinking about all the stuff I have to do in my life. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Absolutely. Yeah, that's it. Um,
And that was one of the reasons I quit Mischief last year too, was because it was starting to feel like a job. And like if I missed a raid, I'd feel really like I was letting people down and I was upset and I was missing out. And if I didn't have the time to spend an hour and a half during the week to spend getting more AA for more glyphs, and I wasn't keeping up with the other tanks who did have glyphs. So I was letting people down there. I wasn't doing my job properly, and all that pressure started to build up. And I started looking and realized, like, I don't want to dread logging in. It's a game.
mm,
First and foremost, it's a game. Why? Who goes to the baseball field and is pissed off that they have to go, and they're like, God damn it, I hate this. I don't want to play this game. This is stupid. Like, I don't want to be here right now. Then don't play baseball. That's
right.
as simple as that. Like, I was getting to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't want to do this. And furthermore, I'm spending more time than I should doing this thing I don't want to do. So I was like, I quit. Quit Mischief cold turkey. I was like, I gotta go. So
You said something really good in the Discord last week too. You basically summed that up in like three sentences. I think somebody was having a tough time, and you were like, "It's the mind can make it out to be way bigger than it actually is. At the end of the day, we're playing a game, you know?"
yeah, I think it's a combination of people were getting really upset about the amount of bat phones that were getting called, and then people were getting upset about
Yeah,
how long raids were taking.
yeah.
And I shut the whole thing down of telling them like, you don't have to go.
No, you can
Like
just press camp.
if your phone, like, there's been times when I've been doing other stuff or laying in my bed or whatever it is, and my phone goes off and I look at it and it says C2 fire, or Vexthal, get to Vexthal. And yeah, I want to do it, but I choose not to because I want to sleep, or I want to hang out with my cats, or I want to watch TikTok reels, or I want to finish cooking, or whatever it is I'm doing at the time. I choose to do that instead. And if I'm on a raid and it's 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, and we're still raiding because for some reason the raid's going slow, I would just log off if I need to log off. And some people don't act like that. They act like they have to attend every bat phone and they have to be there for every single moment of every raid. And then, but they also have to jump on and complain afterwards. Hey, raids took too long last night. No, they didn't. They went as long as they went, and you stayed for the whole thing. Well, I wanted to be around for bids, and we did bids really late because the raids land late. There's auto bidders. There's auto bidders. Set up your auto bidders and walk away from your computer. You are choosing to put that pressure on yourself that I have to be here to get the best deal because I don't want to pay 200 DKP for my sword when I could have paid 180. Okay, well, you're choosing to do that. You're putting that pressure on yourself. The guild is not telling you. The guild has told you we have no RA requirements. Like, we don't want people to show up and never raid, but you could miss tons of raids. We have people who show up and like raid a couple of weeks and then don't show up the whole rest of the X pack,
Yeah,
right? There's nothing wrong with that. You're totally allowed to do that. The bat phones are totally non-RA. RA is raid attendance for anybody who doesn't know, although I'm assuming anybody who's listening to an EverQuest podcast is going to know all these terms.
yeah,
Um, we have zero RA for bat phones too. They don't count towards your RA. So miss all the bat phones you want. And yeah, you're missing out on opportunities to buy gear and you're missing out on opportunities to make 5 DKP here and there. But that's the balance we are talking about. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't come on the forum and give officers a hard time because raids ran a little slow and it inconvenienced your life when The way to stop your life from being inconvenienced was for you to log off, not for you to make it a problem of 150 people on a Discord and 15 officers. You know what I mean? Like it's your job to police your own experience. And if your experience is, oh my God, I'm out later than I want to be, tell everybody good night and hit the gate potion.
Yes. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
hit
Yeah.
EX. Don't even say anything. Leave Discord and hit EX and leave.
Yeah.
Walk away from your computer. Tell people later what happened. It's just that simple.
Yeah, yeah, it's the only game I've played where your actual reputation matters the most too, though. That's the piece
Yeah.
that why I get swept in and I had my burnout and also with a leader like Zaid and the competency of the officer crew, there is this, they do so much for me, like as a player that doesn't put the time in, like the organization that they do. There's this also this aspect of it where it's like I want to be what they want me to be, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
feel
that,
that too.
yeah. And that's another one of those weird, the interesting dynamics that you get in this game that I'm sure maybe in Warcraft it gets that way, but the difference between Warcraft and EverQuest, I think, is what you lose when you screw up is time. And I guess you do in Warcraft too, but because the length of time it takes to progress and the amount of communication that you need to grow in the game, it creates these psychological dynamics between you and the people you play with that are real to life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like you have to do conflict resolution. You have to do, look, we're on the same team, but we don't like each other. Like there's several people in the Discord I straight up dislike. There's several people in the Discord of Mischief I straight up disliked. I don't like their voices. I don't like what they say. I don't like their politics. I don't like what they talk about, whatever it is. Like I don't like this person. But I still have to protect them from the mobs. I still expect them to cast heals on me. I still expect them to cast buffs on me. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And that definitely correlates to real life. You have to do that in your real life. You have to deal with and get along with people you don't necessarily want to or would otherwise,
Right.
whether because they're in your family or they're at your job or they're your neighbors or whatever it is. So yeah, it's very much EQ is very much like encapsulating a lot of real life moments and things to it. One of the things that drew me about EQ when I first got into it too was I learned the whole idea of like a real world live active economy. I was like, "Oh, what do you
Yeah.
mean?" And I was like, there, I mean, there's like game vendors and stuff in the game too, but people are like, "Yeah, but like a lot of the stuff that is not doesn't go to vendors and doesn't come from vendors." He's like, "You determine that value." You know what I mean? And that's a real life economy at work. You know, what I mean, we see it every day with chrono prices and this and supply and demand. Okay, there's three guys in Bazaar that are trying to sell this item and they're all staying really hard at their high price, so that's not going to come down. Okay, well, this guy decided he doesn't care about the high price and he chunked off 10%. Well, now this guy wants to sell it more than that guy, so he chunked off 10% off that guy's 10%. Right? That's real economy at work. That's not a based thing like you go into a video game and the silver sword is going to cost 10,000 gold from this vendor in this town, no matter where, no matter who's
And
playing
it
the
just
game.
goes into the void. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's 10,000 and that's it. It's set, right? For me, if I want, I wanted my BIS one hand blunt this expansion. On Mischief, it was really rare and the economy was a little more blown out with prices for some items. I ended up paying like 8 or 9 chrono for my one hander in pop on Mischief because I had a little extra money and it was my hobby. It was my only hobby, so I was throwing a little money at chrono. Um, this time, I only ended up having to pay two that I earned from selling stuff from a GDKP rate at the end of Luckland.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I didn't come into it going, oh, okay, this cudgel's definitely going to be 9 chrono because it was last time. The economy's completely different beast. So,
Right.
yeah.
And there's also an undercurrent of chrono lords that are behind the scenes the same way like the lobbyists and like
Oh, yeah, man. Like you
there's
can
somebody
watch.
controlling the money flow of our
Yep.
server behind the scene.
On Mischief for a long time it was Gig because they were the huge Zerg like 250 person GDKP based guild. And now it's on Teek, it's Faceless's Friday GDKP raids. You can actually watch the chrono change based on that. That makes sense?
Wow. Yeah.
Like Friday nights, there are more people trying to cash out their chrono to use the raw platinum to go towards the GDKP run. So, it behooves you to be a chrono seller at that time because you can offer a little less because people need that raw platinum right now because the bids are almost over and I just bid 2 billion on this dark sword or whatever and I got to send it off to this guy at the end. So yeah, I need to sell this chrono. So yeah, I'll take 10,000 less for each chrono. I need to sell these two really fast, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of the week, it might be a little different. It might be like, well, I don't need the raw platinum that bad. I can hang out and wait for someone who's not as desperate to sell and sell me a chrono at a little different, better price. So we can actually watch the chrono prices move based on supply and demand of a GDKP run.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I guess to end this episode, I'd like to ask, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Well, where are you where's your intention at now? Like, so we're on the Teek server, we're both raiding with Faceless. And you said that there's a certain expansion you want to hit. Where's your mindset at for this run of EverQuest for you?
I don't really have one this time. Last time it was I wanted to see content that I'd already seen, but from the perspective of like really well geared, really well gilded, really knowledgeable player instead of fumbling around 3X packs back wearing paper armor. Now I'm current X pack wearing the highest end BIS gear from the last X pack, ready to go immediately as soon as this new content comes out. I got to experience in that on Mischief from Velius all the way through Rev 4 Underfoot or whatever when I quit. So I'm not trying to necessarily do that on this server. I'm going a lot more casual. I'm not spending a lot of chrono. I'm not hoarding my DKP and trying to like BIS out every single time. I'm a low DKP right now and paying less decay because I'm just buying what I want when I want it and enjoying my time. I don't have any expectations for how long to be in the game at all. I came back because a friend of ours um, from the Foreverquest Destro um, convinced me to come back to play Teak for a little while because a lot of the old crew and people were playing, and it was going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be a temporary thing for him until his baby comes. So I was kind of going into it assuming it was going to be a temporary thing. And once my kind of BFF on EverQuest was playing less, I would be playing less. But he hasn't been playing a lot the last couple of weeks because he's been doing family and life stuff. And I've still been really enjoying playing with a bunch of other people and making new relationships and new friends. So I think I'm probably going to stick around on Teak for a little while. I don't know what will happen if a new TLP rolls around in the summertime, and I'd have to see, and it would depend a lot on which people in the community on Teak leave and how I feel about the current stuff going on with Teak of whether or not I want to keep going with Teak or re-roll to another TLP or take another break from Everquest for a little. Don't know. I'm kind of up in the air about everything. So.
Well, great. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I've got to just pay attention to what you were describing, the work-life balance thing. I don't want to get burned out. I'd like to stay connected with everybody, and yeah, and I think that's part of one of the reasons, another reason I started the podcast is doing things like this makes me want to play. Like us talking about this made me want to get on my Shadowknight. Like,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, because and that's what it was. Listening to Jeff and Sean and Zaid in the beginning, them talking about playing made me want to play. And I guess
Mhm.
my hope would be um, that I could just stay grounded so I can continue to have a good time.
Yeah, I kind of view EverQuest as kind of a social club with a game attached to it.
Yeah,
Like, so don't burn yourself out trying to go so hard at the game that you don't want to show up and socialize anymore. And don't socialize to the point where your connections to people become so important that like an argument with this guy ends your entire desire to play and be around these people anyway. You know what I mean? Like you have to find a
yeah.
balance. It is a game and it is a social network that you have, but this is not your main core of friends probably. This is not your coworkers, this is not your family, and this is not what defines your life. This is an activity, a hobby of varying levels depending on who you are and what level of interest you want to put into the game and time you want to put into it. Some people are going to have six computers and play all the time. Some people are going to raid log and not show up for a month at a time. And there's no wrong way to play. So, in my opinion, the best way to play is to have fun, enjoy the people you're playing with, and just balance it well with the rest of your life. And then you can play EverQuest the rest of your life, as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to.
Yeah, me too. Any final thoughts before we close out? Any shout outs you want to give or anything that comes to mind?
No, just I think we covered it pretty good. We got some shout outs over the episode to people like Destro and stuff, and I've just been enjoying playing and looking forward to playing with some of these people for a long time and meeting some new friends and enjoying everything that comes along with that and watching pixels together while we do it.
Yeah, collecting our pixel magics.
Exactly. Decorating our pixel dolls.
And eventually we'll have our own guild house to put things on.
There you go. And my hope is that as technology gets better and the costs gets so low to do certain things, that there's going to be enough, somebody's going to invest $50,000 in the future and do what would account of $10 million worth of work now with the computers they have in 20 years. And they're going to go, oh, I used this AI program that I paid for, and it took me 3 or 4 weeks, but I totally had it upgrade the graphics engine for EverQuest. So it's exactly like EverQuest was before, but all the graphics are new. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking forward to pet projects like that. The guy who's doing the 3D version of VR EverQuest,
Yeah.
the person who's doing EverQuest in like Minecraft style, or even things that are just inspired by EverQuest, like Monsters and Memories that's coming out. The guy, one of the old EverQuest developers, is now making his own game that's very much inspired by that
Yeah.
feel of EverQuest.
Other
Looking
Sean.
forward to all that. Like, as Zayd said at one time, like just sitting around in a retirement home playing EverQuest.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's wrap it up. Thanks for joining if you stayed with us, and we'll hope to see you in game and or shoot us messages. We're available.
Yeah, I'm around.
All right, thanks, Doomsdee.
Yeah, later, everybody.